Good morning, everyone. It's Mr. Aegis here, welcoming you to our active worship on the Feast of the Epiphany, Wednesday the 6th of January. I'm sorry, and all of your teachers are sorry, all the members of staff are sorry that we are not able to celebrate this together in school due to the new lockdown. But nonetheless, I hope you're joining us wherever you happen to be today to celebrate this really important feast in the church's calendar, and probably the only feast that has this particular liturgical colour. So we start, as always, by making the sign of the cross. So whatever I do and whatever I ask you to do at home, hopefully you feel comfortable to join in with these things. If not, just sit back and sort of take it all in. In the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So the Feast of the Epiphany, which is also known as the Coming of the Magi, is a key moment in the life of the Church where Christians remember how the three wise men, the Magi, visit the baby Jesus in the manger. We sing the hymn "We Three Kings." We sort of have been led to believe that they were royalty, but I think sort of common sort of acceptance now is that they were wise men who studied the stars, let's say astrologers, and that they came from the east, which I think is a generic term for somewhere outside of the Holy Land. Traditionally, we see them visiting Jesus not long after the birth, but their arrival may have been a while after. In Eastern Orthodox churches, the Epiphany is celebrated on January the 19th. And you can see the two lovely images there of these three people on their way to the manger in Bethlehem, where the star is said to have rested above, and then the other one on the left-hand side of them actually presenting Jesus, Mary and Joseph with the gifts that are deeply symbolic of the child Jesus. So I'm going to read to you the account, the only account in the New Testament from Matthew's Gospel of the visiting of the Magi. When you see the words in bold, you join in with me making that response, and just follow along as I read. So this is a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." And then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And then, having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Now, probably from most of our days in primary school, we have heard that story time and time again. And often when we hear things time and time again, it tends to sort of go in one ear and out the other, especially does with me. But this story is more than just a story that we've seen represented in many films. A favourite being the Nativity, where it kind of gets completely and utterly sort of changed. We forget what it essentially sort of symbolises, the meaning of this particular sort of story. So I'm going to explain to you now some of those key sort of symbolic ideas. So this account of the visit of the wise men is important for many reasons, but we're going to look at just two of them. Firstly, the gifts they brought the baby are deeply symbolic and point to a belief that the child was destined to fulfill a particular role. All three items, the gold, the frankincense and the myrrh, were commonly given upon visiting royalty. So straight away we know that what they are doing is making a statement about who this child is, even though he's been born in this shack, this manger, this cave where usually animals are kept. It's suggesting that they believe that he is someone of deep importance. However, each of them points to a deeper truth. The gold reminds us of Jesus as the King of Heaven and the descendant of King David. For those of you in year 8 at the moment who've been looking at the different prophets from the Old Testament, might recognise that King David is this key figure in the history of the Jewish people, and that the Messiah was said to have come from his line, and would therefore suggest that this person would also be royalty. The second gift, frankincense. In fact, frankincense and myrrh are both saps taken from different trees and then dried and used for different reasons. The frankincense, which is where we get the word incense, was used by the temple priests when making their offerings to God. Therefore, this gift reminds us of Jesus' role as a priest. So in the temple on a daily basis, when the temple still stood in Jerusalem, the priests would have been sacrificing animals. They would have been burning those as burnt offerings, and I suppose for two reasons. One being to kind of mask the smell of all that burning meat, but also to sort of symbolize the idea that their prayers were being taken up to heaven. They would burn this frankincense, and that's something that reminds us of Jesus' role as a priest. When we think about a priest, we think about someone in the Catholic Church, perhaps, who presides over the sacraments, but really the role of a priest is to be God's messenger on earth. And finally, myrrh, which is also, like I said, the dried sap of a particular tree, was used with oil to anoint bodies at death. And this acts as a foretelling and reminder of Jesus' death on the cross. So those three things that we've sung about since we've been, like I said, at primary school, are probably things that we may take for granted, and we may not sort of realise their deep symbolic value. But hopefully that reminds you of what they suggest, that this child, this tiny, innocent, hopeless and helpless child, was to become someone of such deep importance as to change the lives of literally millions, if not billions, of people. So the second important thing about this event, and coming from the idea of our gifts, it reminds us of our own gifts. Now, interestingly, before we broke up, I held a number of different sessions in the chapel, and with some of the groups, I asked, for them to think about some of the gifts that they had, some of the qualities that they might sort of illustrate. And like I said, the oft given response is a look of bemusement, as if to say, what gifts? I don't have any gifts. And we tend to kind of have that slightly negative view of ourselves. And often that negative view comes from the result of comparing ourselves to others. I do it, your teachers do it. We often will look at other people and compare ourselves to them, either to make ourselves feel better, or inherently we kind of tend to make ourselves feel worse, because we tend to sort of look at other people and go, aren't they brilliant, aren't they beautiful, aren't they whatever it happens to be. And as a result, we tend to sort of ignore and forget about our own gifts. But I believe, and I know that all of your teachers and the members of staff in school who support you on a day-to-day basis recognise that you all have gifts, the things that make you who you are. And what's really important is that we should make it a habit to remind ourselves of what our gifts are. So you might be a brilliant listener or giver of advice. You might be naturally helpful and hardworking. You may be an excellent sports person or mathematician, I wish, scientist, a linguist or philosopher. You may be eternally cheerful and help to brighten other people's days. You might have a great sense of humour that is used to make people happy. And so really what's important about gifts is that we don't, the idea of a gift is that it's something important, something to be cherished and looked after, not to be forgotten or not to be squandered, and hopefully to be used for the good of others as well. And the only problem is that we often fail to recognise our own gifts because we compare ourselves to others, or we squander them out of laziness or out of embarrassment. I think often that happens as well. Sometimes we don't feel like we can be ourselves, we can show our gifts because we might think that it's arrogant, and we get embarrassed at that thought. But as long as it's done for a good purpose and a positive purpose and a helpful purpose, then I don't see anything wrong with that. So what I'm going to ask you to do is set yourself a challenge. Now, often you get to a new year, we set ourselves resolutions. Yes, I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to go to the gym. Sadly for me, my history of joining gyms ends in boredom, and I end up not going and then cancelling my membership. It might be that you want to learn something brand new, and unfortunately time gets in the way and we fail to do that. It might be that we want to start eating a particular way or following a particular sort of way of life that we think is going to be healthy and beneficial to our minds and our bodies. And then sadly, as time goes on, things become more busy and life gets hectic and those things sort of drift away. So I want to make your task a simple one, but a really, really important one. Okay, so what I want you to do is one or both of these things. The first is to spend in a moment time thinking about what your gifts are, and do think really, really hard about what gifts you have. If someone were to stand in front of you or to describe you to another person, what positive, good things might they say about you? What gifts might they say you have? And to think about it from their point of view so that you can recognise that in yourself. And then what I want you to do is make a habit of reminding yourself about that gift every day. And in a minute, after our little moment of reflection, I'm going to give you a little way of perhaps reminding ourselves to do that. And the second is to message someone else and tell them what gifts they have, a sort of virtual affirmation. So maybe just send them a message, a little text, write them a letter, send them a card and say, do you know what, one thing I absolutely love about you is that you are such and such, and say thank you to them as well, because often when people affect us with their gifts in a positive way, it is a reason to be grateful. So I think that's a really important thing as well. So send someone that virtual affirmation to remind them that they are important and gifted, and especially if they don't recognize it in themselves. So what I'd like us to do now, we're just going to spend some time in quiet reflection. So use this time to think about your gifts and ask God how to use them wisely. Remember, there's a passage in scripture that says, no one lights a lamp and then puts it under a cover, a bushel. What's the point of lighting something, its purpose to provide light, to then just cover it up? We have to let our lights shine in whatever way we can, especially at the moment when, we're surrounded by so much doom and gloom. And rightly so. Some of you have been deeply affected by the coronavirus. And I think we need to keep positive for ourselves, and we need to keep positive for them, and we need to keep on reminding ourselves of our responsibility to those people. So remember your loved ones, those who are still alive and those who have sadly died, and offer your thoughts and prayers for them to God. And pray for your friends as well, because they may be suffering. You may know about it, you may not know about it, but needless to say, let's ask God to offer them some comfort. So I'm just going to play a short little piece of music, and I would like you to spend some time in quiet reflection.